Welcome to the I've Been Thinking podcast, where everyday thoughts lead to extraordinary conversation. We want to first off and just thank everybody that's been listening and tuning in. We are every week getting more and more views, and so we're happy that the wisdom or our conversation is just benefiting other people. So thank you so much for everybody that is just tuning in everywhere. You got Ryan Lehman on the mic right now, and you got Mike as the co-host. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing well, Ryan. How are you doing?
Good. So we got an exciting topic today, and we're going to be talking about the power of mentorship. So, Mike, I know before the show we've been talking a little bit about it. So, what is the first thought when you think of just mentorship in general?
First thought would be somebody who has maybe more experience than you. It's probably required of a mentor. Somebody who knows something more than what you know, or more experience. So it's probably what we mean by a mentor. That'd be my first thought. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's someone that maybe has had experiences that you might have not had before. And it's interesting because I feel like it doesn't have to be someone that's older necessarily. There's a lot of younger mentors that can be maybe more savvy in technology, maybe more experienced, that can help someone maybe that's in the older generation. I was thinking about that before the podcast, and I was like, oh, does a mentor always have to be older? And I was like, I feel like that's not true.
It's just experience, maybe, not age.
Yeah.
Usually they're correlated, yeah, I see, but not necessarily. I agree.
Right.
So is this a topic you've been thinking about a lot or a little bit?
I think I've been thinking about it for probably over a year now, just because like not intensely either. I think there's always been value in mentorships. I feel like I've been surrounded by other people that have mentioned, "Oh, you should probably try to find a mentor." And it's like I feel like it's not that easy to just find a mentor. They don't just grow on trees. And honestly, I've had the opportunity in the past where someone's actually reached out and said, "Hey, like, do you mind if I actually be your mentor?" Because I think it goes both ways. Like when you have all this knowledge and experience and wisdom, then you almost want to like feel like you want to give back. And unfortunately, like I didn't feel like that mentorship would be like the most beneficial. So I think that there is a two-way street that goes on. But I think that it does resonate with me on like a weekly basis of, I feel like I'd like to talk to someone about this. And usually that's where I reach out to the friends that I've talked with in the past before about like certain topics. But having someone that's like grown up and had these experiences maybe longer term, and I think like we talked about before, like someone that's older technically can have like wiser wisdom than someone that's younger because they just haven't experienced as much life. I feel like I'm still like really jealous of some people that have like these gurus in this area that they're in, that they've been able to like really connect with and have like this deep personal bond.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a valuable thing to have somebody who can like hyperlink your growth, right? It's kind of what we talk about sometimes is I've got a problem and I don't know how to solve it, or I'm going down a road and not quite sure where it's headed. So having somebody to just make that clearer, right? And the feedback of that is, I think, really helpful. So I agree. Do you have a mentor or mentor anybody?
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like, so like I mentioned before, when someone like came to me, I was like, I think I should be your mentor. I feel like I've done that to quite a few people. And I feel like I've gotten the same feedback of like, like I don't see the benefit in having this, and that's fine. And like it's not directly shown that, but I've seen it like phase away. I have, for a few people for like short periods of time, been like I guess a mentor for like small things. So for instance, if someone was trying to find an internship, especially like in tech, I feel like I've been through that process before. So help them for a few weeks or for a small period of time, and they might get like a job and then kind of dwindles down from there, because it's like I don't need this as much. But I'm always open to like, listen, I love to talk to you more long term if you want, because like we can like both grow together. But I feel like I haven't stuck to I don't have a mentee that's been like long term. And I think for me, for a mentor, I'd honestly say that it's probably my dad has been the biggest mentor just because the experiences he's been through in his life, I find extremely valuable. And I think he can he can bring a lot of insight into like someone that's younger who's trying to be like ambitious, trying to find out like what they want to do. And I think he phrases stuff like really well. And so like I think I always
Mm,
appreciate talking to my dad more and more, because of that, just because of the knowledge he's gained over the past couple of years.
that's cool.
Yeah. What about you?
Um, yeah, definitely like similar to what you said about maybe seasonally certain people that I've either learned from or helped. I think that's definitely been true, especially in uh, like my career. Just different people I've worked with who have been able to teach me a lot of things. And then similarly, an intern works for the summer and help him out for a couple months, teach him some of what I know, but then kind of changes. So definitely shorter term, I've had some of that. Um, the only other place that comes to mind is I do help with, I volunteered with the youth program at the church. And so they're not like direct individual mentorships, me mentoring one person. Usually they're groups of younger guys, but that is something that I do on a regular basis, a couple times a week.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
So
When
has that
you bring up the topic of the power of mentorship, what do you think the power is?
Ooh, so I think there's like a few points I want to hit on here, and each point I want to ask like your opinion on. So I think we talked about like acquiring insights, but more
Hmm.
specifically, someone has all this experience and they're able to maybe allow you to have some of this experience. But I think more specifically, it's you might take years to go through trial and error for maybe a certain field or a certain path that you're going on. And this person might have done similar failures before. So you can maybe learn from those. And the way I see it, I think mentorship has changed in the past until now. I think they've changed a lot. So I think before, like pre everything was online, where you can find everything anywhere, it's like this was the way to get information.
Hmm.
This was the way to get these experiences. Like there's no right or wrong. Like this just seems like the right way because I don't have experience. I can't just look up online and find thousands of answers. And I
Yeah.
think now mentorship has become more of, hey, there's so much information out there. Like you go to the supermarket and there's like hundreds of toothpaste. It's like I don't know what toothpaste to buy. There's just like so many. And so I think, which I know it's a weird analogy, but I recently had to get new toothpaste. That's why.
Uh,
So
Hmm.
I think as a mentor, like you're able to cut out a lot of this noise and bring it back down to, okay, this is like what might make sense for your path. Because I think a big part of
hmm.
mentorship is when you're finding that mentor to be with, like I mentioned, it's not
Yeah.
just, hey, like someone wants to mentor me, let's just go with that. It's more of, let me see who resonates me with the most so they can maybe help me on that track. And I'm
Hmm.
curious of what you think about that.
Hmm. Well, I agree with most of what you said. I will add that I feel like I've experienced some of what you said with the youth program at church, where uh, it's very tangible sometimes when I feel like I have experienced something, gone through something that helped me learn a truth about Christianity or a truth about God that I understand, more than just the facts of an argument or something like that. Like I grasp it. And then to listen to, 13-year-old or 15-year-old guys asking questions that are getting towards that answer, but they're not right, like close yet, but they're kind of barking up the right tree. Um, to see it from that perspective, I can imagine. Well, it's just interesting, right? You say, okay, if I can see that in somebody else, then what would somebody else see in me in the stupid questions I'm asking that have very concrete answers that they could just help me get to, right? I think that sounds like a lot of power. you're talking about power of mentorship.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I feel like it kind of goes up the avenue of having diverse perspective
hmm.
where you're not seeing this single vision anymore. Like people can bring in perspectives that you might have not realized before, which I really like.
Yeah, we're just, somebody else literally knows what you're asking about, right? What your thought process is because they've been there and can be
Hmm.
able to help you, just guide you through the question that you're asking, how to answer it, or
Hmm.
to avoid certain things. So yeah, that we say hindsight is 2020. So to be able to give that hindsight to somebody else would be a powerful thing.
Hmm. That's a good point. So then what do you think of this is basically the second point that I wanted to touch on. It's accountability. Do you think that
Hmm.
mentorship has an aspect of accountability in it?
Hmm. What do you mean by accountability? Define it for me. So we're talking about the same thing.
You're accountable for the actions that you're taking in your life,
Okay,
making
but
sure
you're
that you're
you're like you're accountable to the other person.
so I guess however you're using your mentorship, and let's just put an example in place that maybe you're starting a business and you're getting
Hmm.
mentorship from a business like point of view for you to be working on stuff every week and making sure that you're hitting your goals because I mean things happen in life. You go on vacation or you get burnt out for some reason, making sure that you're heading towards this goal, like can that mentor play a role in that sort of accountability?
Hmm. And they should. Seems like they wouldn't be very good if they if they weren't. Uh, yeah, that'd probably be like the best form of a mentor. Somebody who's giving you advice, maybe helping you think or see things clearly, but then also helping you achieve things. Yeah,
Hmm.
I think I agree with that.
Okay. Do you like you personally? Do you think that like this is a highly rated skill that you want for your mentor mentee relationship? Because of course it would be nice to have,
Hmm.
but like if it wasn't there, would it be detrimental for that type of relationship?
It's a good question. Maybe I'd say, yeah, it'd be nice to have, but I think you could have a productive, um, beneficial relationship with somebody who is more of a resource, you know, not necessarily somebody who is gonna check in every week and make sure you're doing what you need to be doing. You know what I mean? That'd be more specific versus a mentor who could maybe once a month just help you think through a problem, right? Or you could have a mentor in a very specific way, like a mentor for one technical aspect of your job or something like that that you can go to for an answer. And that
Mhm.
wouldn't necessarily require accountability. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I think personally, I could see the value in both. But you do, I wouldn't say accountability is something that's necessarily um, only something you can get from a mentor. I think you can get good accountability from friends or a spouse or anybody else. Somebody
Hmm.
like, if you think of a mentor being above you in a category, I think you can get accountability from somebody next to you just as well as somebody above you. So maybe I don't think it's required. Seems like a useful thing, but
Hmm.
I wouldn't, I wouldn't say it's required. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I don't. I like what you mentioned before of like there's different types of mentorships, and I think there is a lot of value in having mentorships that don't necessarily have this accountability. Maybe they're one-off questions every now and then, because I mean, as a mentor, sometimes these people are doing a lot of things. And so for them to help you out, it's almost like they're taking time out of their day. So for them to
Mm-hmm.
be make sure you're accountable means they have to make sure that they're putting in a little bit more time and effort, which sometimes you can't always get, which I think is totally okay. But what I do like about it is I think a lot of your friends, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but because most people tend to surround themselves with friends that are around their age, a lot
Yeah.
of the thinking is, and this could be wrong, but it's like short term thinking almost. It's like, okay, you're here, how do we get to the next point of view? But when you have a mentor that's maybe a bit older, maybe, I mean, we're in our 20s now, but maybe someone that's like 40 or 50, they might be
Mm.
looking at you and saying, oh, don't actually take that step because, yeah, that might be good for you in the next couple of years, but it's
Right.
not going to be good for you in like the long term. So I love that more long term thinking goal. I think that's what a mentor could be like super helpful for.
Mm. I agree. Yeah. Yeah. Just I guess it depends what you mean by accountability. If you mean
Hmm.
very specific week on week kind of stuff, or yeah, like strategic steps, I think that's definitely a good value in a mentor.
Yeah. It's also, it depends on the person that's getting this mentorship too, because I mean, some people can hold themselves 100% accountable and like they're fine with that. Some
Mm.
people have maybe just a lot going on and they're not able to always be accountable for some of their professional stuff that they're doing outside of maybe if they're doing stuff outside of work. So it's maybe not the highest priority. So you have this mentorship and you have in your mind of this maybe they're really successful. This person that's giving me their time as mentoring me. The last thing I'm going to do is say, oh, I didn't send out that marketing form last week, and it's like
Yeah.
like why not? Like what I'm spending an hour every week talking to you when I could be doing something else and you can't even spend the time. It's like that's accountable, man.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good perspective that um, having somebody who's helping you probably builds in that little bit of pressure and
Hmm.
like good pressure to, like you're saying, put time in that you know that they're giving you. I think that's a good point. That's like built in accountability.
Hmm.
I like that. It's a good ad.
So what do you think of? Because I've heard this in the past. Oh, I don't want to mentor because I would feel too much pressure because this
Mm.
person is allocating time for me, and I feel like I'm almost like wasting their time. I've heard
Mm.
that before.
Do you have a thought on that before I answer?
I'd like to hear your thought first, and then maybe I could answer.
I'd really like to hear your thought first. How long can we do this? Um, my genuinely my first thought was that's a pretty selfish thing to say because if you've ever mentored anybody or tried to help anybody, you know that giving somebody what you also have is very valuable to you.
Hmm.
Um, so to mistakenly think that you're a burden on somebody else is probably just not true. Likely, if somebody's willing to mentor you, they want to help you, they see some value in it, and then they're gonna benefit from it as well. Whether
Hmm.
they're there's just joy in teaching people or seeing somebody else grow or whatever it is. So I would say that that's probably just a lie that we believe.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think there's anything I disagree about there. I remember there was an experience of someone that was talking to me about mentorship. Like this was a couple months ago, and their mentor, who was this really successful, basically stock trader, and he was allowing himself to like mentor some people on the side, not charging them any money for it. And so he kind of put out this forum to say, listen, people that want this, they can have this, and it was like you had to apply and all this other stuff, and they started getting mentored by this person, and it was like every Monday or something like that you have to meet from like 6 to 7. It's like okay, you knew that when you signed up, like you had to do that, like and you can't miss any. And I think they missed a session, and the mentor dropped them and was like, listen, like that's like I told you from 6 to 7 every Monday. This is like valuable time I'm giving back to you, and you
Mm-hmm.
missed one, and so I'm not going to be your mentor anymore. So it was pretty. I never heard of that before. I mean, I know that this person is pretty significant in like the stock world, but I've never heard of something that intense before. Because to me, it's like
Hmm.
I an entire part of a mentorship is having this almost this trust and this bond between someone that you can both grow personally, like you mentioned. And now this feels very one-sided, and I feel like a lot of mentorship mentees can feel that way sometimes.
Hmm. Yeah, I've never heard of that either. Applying for a mentorship.
Wait, that's really popular. There's a lot of people
Is
that
it
do
really?
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then I take back what I said earlier that if somebody's having you apply for a mentorship, they may or may not be in it for the for
Yeah.
the helping you. Maybe they're in it for some other reason. But uh, yeah, I think maybe that comes to an interesting distinction between a mentor and a resource.
Hmm.
Like, is there something deeper to a mentor than just somebody who knows more than you, who is willing to share it?
Hmm.
Like, what do you call the person who actually like has more experience than you, is willing to share it, and then wants the best for you that you can trust,
Yeah.
right? Because that's a little bit deeper than just, I can imagine a professor is a good example. They have the information, they're willing to teach you, but you're paying them, right? So they
Yeah.
might want the best for you, but they might not. They might just be doing it because it's a job. And you can ask them questions and they might give you good answers, but you might not have that kind of trust or accountability that you're talking about. Um, so yeah, that might be a useful distinction. I don't know what words you want to use for that, one versus the other, but um, yeah, I think in the Christian context that's always referred to as a disciple. Uh, like to disciple somebody would be to have that type of relationship that you actually care about their, in that case, spiritual growth. Um, Whereas, yeah, to make this to answer this in the Christian terms, like a pastor or a teacher or a priest might be somebody who has answers, who can guide you, right? But then somebody who disciples you, who's a mentor, they would be interested in a different type of way in your spiritual development, in your growth, and have a relationship with you that's more than just answers. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that distinction between more kind of transactional versus, like you said, trust?
I think it just depends on what the mentee and mentor are looking for. Like as a mentor, if you
Mm-hmm.
honestly feel like you just don't have enough time, but maybe you have an hour each week to just give some wisdom or provide some advice, and maybe that's your way of feeling like you're giving back, then that's fine.
Right.
And I think as long as the mentee understands the scenario, then I think it's totally okay and it's totally healthy. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the problem starts to come in is, hey, this is not what I signed up for, which from what I've seen in the past, for the most part, it's pretty upfront. If someone is providing this service, whether it's paid or not, it's usually upfront said of like, hey, I'm giving you an hour of my time. And it
Right.
almost seems like it's this transactional. But I do feel like there's a lot of benefits from having a mentorship that is not that way, just
Hmm.
because it's hard to have that big component of what we talked about before of that long-term personal growth if it's transactional, because it's like I don't care what you do the next 5 years because I'm probably not going to know who you are in 5 years.
Right. Right. Yeah, it does become much more like a teacher, where if you went to, did a master's program for 2 years, you're going to have professors who teach you information and then you go your separate ways.
Hmm.
So if you find someone online who you want to be a mentor for you in some area, it's probably what you're buying. You're probably
Yeah.
buying somebody's time and information, right? You're buying their expertise. But I don't know how you find the deeper form of that. I don't know. You might just have to find the right person. Uh, because then you're talking about a relationship. That's what you're talking about,
Yeah.
not just a transaction of I give you money, you give me information. It's
Hmm.
more, you know, our lives are connected in some meaningful way.
Yeah, it's true.
Like you said, that's not gonna maybe end in 2 years, but they'd be around for a long time in your life. So yeah, it's an interesting, and it's a good question. I mean, there might be certain things that you don't need a lifelong guide, but you need somebody for 6 months to help you do something.
Yeah.
That might not be a bad thing. And yeah, it's just probably useful knowing that there's a difference. Going in expecting something, more from the person you're paying to give you information, expecting to trust them and then being let down because they can't offer that to you. It's probably worth knowing.
Yeah, that's true. And I almost think of it as more of a therapeutic kind of
Hmm.
transaction, or maybe not transaction, but relationship. Because when you're in like therapy, the day one, like I feel like you don't feel like there's this personal connection at all. And over time, your therapist and you start to build this relationship. And so when you come with a problem, the first day the therapist has been trained to, okay, this is technically what I maybe should do, but after a couple of years you learn how this person interacts with the world, and you can
Hmm.
better help them when they have these problems, because you can cater towards, okay, this is generally what I should do, and I know Ryan, so let me mix these together. And so as a
Right.
mentor, I think a really great thing is, after a lot of time, let's just go back to the business example. Say you're stuck on like what to do as like the next steps. If this person has known you like for a long time, the answer is probably very different from if you just went on a quick call with them and this was the first time, because they're going to give you generic business advice. But
Right.
the thing is, you can find that on Google. You can say, okay, you can even type in ChatGPT, like, hey, this is what I've done so far. What are the next steps? But a
Yeah.
mentor is supposed to provide you that like personalized experience that I think cannot be offered if you just search online or look at a chatbot.
No, completely agree. I think I think that's what we've been saying this whole time is that, there's going to be some relationships that are just going to be about information. And
Yeah.
but I do definitely agree. I think this is what you're saying. It's probably more valuable, that personal relationship that you can have with somebody who's interested in your growth, who's interested in helping you do it, that you can trust. I think that's much more valuable for sure.
Hmm. Okay, so then what do you think of, because this is one of the I mentioned a few points of why uh just why mentorship can be beneficial, and this could
Hmm.
be some of the stuff we talked about can go both ways, but this one more specifically towards the mentee benefiting from the mentor, and it's just a matter of like um introducing the mentee to a wider scope of a professional network. And I think that's really important, because as a mentor, you've gone through your life, and this is speaking specifically towards mentors that maybe are a bit older and maybe they form these connections. And so when you need help with something, maybe that mentor doesn't have to be an expert. They don't have to be a jack of all trades, but they can have people in their field that they could say, oh, Ryan, this person probably wouldn't talk to someone randomly because maybe, I don't know, they're really well known,
Right.
but they personally know me because we're close friends. So let me make that introduction.
Hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting point. It's kind of the idea of just getting a foot in the door,
Yeah.
and once you do, then it'll open up somehow. Um, I'm sure you've had that experience moving to a new place. If you become friends with the right person, they know a bunch of people, and then meeting people is easy. So that's not a business or a career example, but I think it's probably similar, right?
Yeah.
You meet the right person in an industry, and they know, 2 degrees from everybody in the industry. Well,
Mhm.
that's useful. You can talk to anybody now. But yeah, the same's true of like when I moved to Boise, met a good friend, and he had lived there his whole life, and so immediately I could kind of find anybody that I needed, whether it was for a job, I could get a good recommendation for who to talk to, um, or just finding restaurants, right? Simple things like
Mhm.
that. So I think that's definitely true. There's a that's a hard thing to find, that type of network, right? Because it takes a long time to build. So I agree. That's a good point. It's a very valuable piece in somebody with more experience. Do you feel like you have anything close to a network like that you could share with somebody else?
For me to share with with other people,
Yeah.
I'd say I'd like it to be a lot more built up than it is now. So I think a pretty big thing that I'm trying to do is one is like I just naturally enjoy conversation. So relationships and building them is a pretty big thing for me right now. But of course, like the goal in mind isn't supposed to be transactional. It's like, hey, I
Mm,
don't want to make friends with you, so I can introduce you to someone else.
right.
It's more of like, yeah, I want to form meaningful relationships, but I am very aware of. I think before when I would talk to someone and I'm just saying, let's just say they were a lifeguard, and to me it's like not that I didn't have anything like in common with a lifeguard. Like they probably do a bunch of other stuff with that. But to me, I guess conversation's a lot more interesting now because it's like, oh, like that's like super interesting because I actually know someone else that does that. So it's also a way to
Mm,
pull in more organic conversation too. But I don't think I have. If someone came to me, I think I have some contacts in maybe like the tech industry, but I wouldn't say like they're they're as heavy as I would like them to be, if that makes sense.
sure. I would say though that they are definitely more whatever connections you do have are more broad than somebody who's brand new, right?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing to think that there's always somebody you, for sake of argument, you could say above you who has more connections that could be valuable to you.
Hmm.
But then almost certainly you have a set of connections that's valuable to somebody, again, for sake of the conversation below you,
Hmm.
who has less. And that builds a interesting ecosystem where each person, curious what you think about this, each person might then have the responsibility to both find somebody above them who can help them grow, but then also find somebody below them that they can help grow.
Yeah, I feel like I don't see that as often as I would like. I think there's quite a lot of people that I see that ask for help, and I don't necessarily see like the big give back there, but it's
Hmm.
also quite hard to see because it's not apparent all the time. Like it's not easy to see. So if someone came to me and asked me, hey, like Ryan, I would love to see if there's an opportunity maybe on your team or on someone's team that you know in tech because not a lot of people are hiring, and you make
Mm-hmm.
those introductions. And maybe they follow up and they're saying, "Oh, thank you so much. I either got something or I didn't." Regardless of what they say, you don't see them saying, "Hey, I landed a job. Now let me help someone else." Like I don't see that necessarily.
Yeah.
So, but in general, like I feel like I don't see that as much. I see it as, hey, like let me scrap for what I can get right now. And to me, that's an interesting point because I'm wondering your thoughts on this. When you
Mm-hmm.
say you have a really good inside door to maybe a company, and one of your closest friends works there that you highly like regard, and you have a deep personal connection with, and you have someone that is looking for a job in it, and really really want that job that your friend is maybe like working on, and they have like an opening, but you really don't know that person that well, and so for you to recommend them and say, listen, I think that this would be a good person for your team, like do you feel comfortable saying that when you really don't know?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's hard to answer in general. Um, it's probably specific to the person. Yeah, like I see the concern though. Sharing
Yeah.
your network is a valuable thing, and the network is based on trust, right? That's really the only thing it's based on. So you have
Hmm.
relationships that are based on some type of trust and past interaction. So um, I think it's a fair point to be careful with who you share those things with, who you share
Hmm.
your wisdom with. Um, yeah, in general, I don't know what to say about that other than maybe your approach could be to be generous with what you know, but selective, right? Like willing to help anybody if they meet certain requirements. If they're not a total idiot and disrespectful, then I might not help them out. But if
Hmm.
somebody wants some help, then to be generally generous, which I just think, like you said, it's better than the perspective of, oh, I'm trying to get to the next thing to find the next person to get to the next spot.
Hmm.
And so you're always looking for somebody who's going to give you a foot up, but you're not looking the other direction and and being useful to somebody else, um, I think it's better to be generally willing to share that, but then maybe you have to make a decision not to.
Hmm.
Yeah. But I do think maybe if you listen to yourself, you'll probably figure out which one you're needing more, whether it's somebody to help you, guide you, or someone to like give your wisdom to. Um, See, I think if you listen to yourself, you'll probably have a good answer for that if you're not already doing both. Because I would argue that both are good for you. Like I'm not making the argument that you should be ready and willing to give your wisdom to other people for their sake.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, maybe you should. Maybe you morally think that that's the right thing to do. But I think it's also good for you. Like it balances you out that um, you need new information from somebody else, but then you also, by giving your information away, that helps you grow in a different way. So, what do you think about that? I think that is like a necessary, healthy balance to have.
Yeah, I think it's important to have both. I think something that I've learned from a lot is when I'm explaining something to someone or I'm walking them through that, I feel like I learn quite a lot because
Right.
I mean, for me, it's I feel like I know something really well, and I'll explain it, and I can't explain it well. And it's like I clearly don't understand it as well as I thought because if I can take something that's complicated and simplify it down and make it something that's easy to understand, then I feel like I really understand it really well.
Hmm.
And so most of the time, when I've taken something new or I've taken an experience that I have, and I've been talking to someone about it, it like almost like clicks in my mind of like all these different things that are firing in my head of like, oh, I didn't actually think about this, or I'm reflecting in this way that I never actually done before by just talking to someone
Right.
and giving them advice. So I think it's incredibly important. So it's really good to have a balance, but I think it's hard to find that because for and I want to ask you a question, but I'm going to hold off for 1 second because I'm wondering for a mentee, if you're trying to have a mentee, how do you find this balance of like, hey, I'd love to share my knowledge, but like almost like not preach to them because some people are
Mm.
like very against that. It's like, listen, like you don't have to be a know-it-all, man. It's like, no, 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 I'm not trying to be a know-it-all. I'm trying to help you. And how do you find that balance?
I think one good thing to do is to challenge whoever you're trying to lead. Um, like challenge them in the direction that you're trying to teach them. So,
Okay.
if you're trying to instill something into somebody because you think it's useful or good for them to learn, you could preach to them. You could tell them a bunch of things. Might be effective. Um, I would say, in addition to speaking it and trying to teach it through words, you can embody it yourself. That's helpful. It's good to be an example, but then also to just directly challenge somebody to be better in whatever way, I think is more engaging than just telling somebody what the right answer is. So a lot of the time, instead of having a conversation that is you saying what is your opinion or what you think the answer is, you can just help guide somebody by asking them the right questions. I think that's always a good approach.
That's a good point. So then I do have a question off of that, and it's more about mentorship. Like, what do you think is a good path for someone to try to find that mentor? Like, are there some steps that you've tried to take in to have that?
No, I got no input on this one. It's something that I need to be better at. Yeah,
Okay,
I'd
that's
be
fair.
out of my skis on that one. So, what about you?
Did- I'm a bit in the same boat of I feel like I don't have as much experience as finding a mentor as maybe some other people, but in general, I think some tips that I've seen to kind of work are like trying to connect with someone organically. So you can like reach out to
Hmm.
someone and have conversation, but don't necessarily force it. Like if someone is in your industry or someone in the space that you want mentorship in and they're a high impactor and you could jump on a call and doesn't seem like it's a good fit, I feel like you just shouldn't try to force it, because like we mentioned, there's so many benefits from a mentorship when it's like organic and it's truly both directions.
Hmm.
So to me, I would settle on someone that's way less of a performer and impactor that I can have like a deeper connection with in general. Finding them, I mean, honestly, it's just you never know. Like you can talk to your friends and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
I've been
Hmm.
having these problems and I've been trying to maybe come up with an ideas. Do you know anybody that might be able to help?" And just going from there, maybe.
No, I agree. I think looking at people, it seems to me that if you looked at the people around you, you could find somebody who could serve as a mentor, and yeah, to not push it too hard, but to find the right person that's the right fit. I agree with that. And it doesn't always have to be super definitive at the beginning, right? You could just start by getting to know somebody better intentionally, or spending some time, go to lunch with somebody a couple times, get some coffee, and then
Yeah,
that turns into something more definitive.
yeah, makes sense. I like that. I like that a lot.
Hmm.
So I think we are down to our last segment, and we call this the takeaway.
I'd like you to know, Ryan, that this is the highlight of my week. This 2 minutes where I get to do the takeaway.
I'm so happy to hear
I'm
that.
quite fond of it. Um, I would say, to give you a takeaway from our conversation, we pretty much just talked about what the dynamics of a mentor relationship would look like. I would say, um, that you could the main distinction being you could have a really transactional relationship with somebody with more knowledge than you, maybe something more like a professor or a teacher who can just instill knowledge in you, answer questions, and that could be useful. It could be exactly what you need, but that there are maybe relationships that are deeper than that, with somebody who does have that additional knowledge and experience, but then is also willing to have a deeper relationship with you, and cares about your success and your growth, that you can build trust with, and that would probably just be a better, more fruitful relationship. um, Mainly because it would probably help you in multiple dimensions, instead of just somebody who you can use as a reference for information. That kind of deeper relationship can can help you grow in different ways. And then towards the end, we talked about you know what it looks like to have somebody who is guiding you, but then also guiding other people in your life, and that maybe that is the most fulfilling pattern for you to be in, to be um, to be giving what you know to other people, but then at the same time, um, kind of having the humility to let other people give you what they know. And if we all did that, that'd be a pretty good system. Um, I think that's what I got. It was an interesting
Well,
conversation.
yeah,
Hopefully
that was
challenging. Hopefully challenging for all of us, that either we don't have somebody that we truly look to as a guide who can help us, or we're not, helping other people as much as we could. So yeah, I liked it a lot.
fantastic takeaway, Mike. That was incredible, like always. But want to just shout out to everybody. Thanks again for following us. Stay tuned for more podcasts. And Mike, thanks again for joining.
Cheers, man. It's been a pleasure.